Welcome to Gooder Talk. I'm Ken Adams. Today I want to share with you the clock method for memorizing a speech. The clock method for memorizing a speech. Now, in an earlier video, I shared with you the clock method for outlining a speech. And this is a follow-up to that video. So if you want to learn how to remember your speech in a pretty good way, you might want to consider the clock method. Now, let's pretend you're giving a speech and it's a 12-minute speech. Now, it doesn't matter if your speech is 5 minutes or an hour or whatever length it is, you can still use the clock method if you can divide the clock up by the number of minutes or the length of your speech. So here's a clock, and I'm going to divide it up into 4 sections. Now, it looks kind of off kilter a little bit, and I'll share with you why. But if you'll look, there's a quarter of the speech that's from 11 to 2, another quarter that's from 2 to 5, a third quarter that's from 5 to 8, and the last quarter is from 8 to 11. Now, the reason for that is I think if you're giving a 12-minute speech, it helps you divide up your speech pretty easily. Now, if you're giving an hour speech or you're giving a 5-minute speech, those numbers don't quite work, but you'll kind of get the concept where you can lengthen or shorten those depending on your speech. But here we're giving a speech that's going to have an introduction, 3 main ideas, and then a conclusion. An introduction, 3 main ideas, and a conclusion. Now, what this does is it helps you divide that speech up. Now, in a 12-minute speech, I would suggest that your introduction would be around 2 minutes, but it could be a little shorter. I don't know that you'd want it to be longer, but it could be a little shorter. So your introduction is about 2 minutes long. And then when you're concluding a speech, you want to kind of wrap it up. You don't want to draw that out. You want to wrap it up pretty quickly. So in a 12-minute speech, you might want to give about a minute to what you're going to conclude your speech with. So 2 minutes for your intro, 1 minute for your conclusion. Now, what that does is it allows you to have your 3 main ideas 3 minutes long each. So your first main idea would be 3 minutes, your second main idea would be 3 minutes, and your third main idea would be 3 minutes. So, now let's pretend that you're going to give a speech about a veterans charity. Now, usually in your introduction, you want to accomplish 2 things. 1, you want to have an attention grabber, and 2, you want to be able to have your key message laid out for your audience. You want to let your audience kind of understand what your key message is. So, if you have this veterans charity that you want to give a speech about, maybe in your introduction, you want to talk about one of your family members. Let's say it's your grandfather who's a veteran. You could tell a short story about your grandfather, why he's important, maybe something about his experience as a veteran. And then your key message about the charity is, we should never forget, let's support each vet. So that's the sentence, that's the phrase, that's the key message. We should never forget, let's support each vet. So that's your key message. So now you have your attention grabber, which is a story about your grandfather who was a veteran. And you have the key message, which is, we should never forget, let's support each vet. So now you want to talk about the 3 main ideas. And so I've come up with 3 main ideas just as an example. So the first main idea is to talk about the charity's purpose. The second main idea is to talk about how $10 a month can help support a vet. And then the third main idea is, what does $10 mean to you? if you were to donate $10 a month, what does that $10 mean to you? What would you have to give up? So those are the three main ideas. And then you would have a conclusion that would sum it all up. All right? So let's talk about what can you do to help you memorize the speech. You've already got the clock. You already know in your head. You've got an introduction. You've got your three main ideas. And you've got a conclusion. Well, research has shown that we remember visual images much better than written words, right? Visual images or pictures are easy to remember than words. So, if we were to use this example of a veterans charity, let's talk about your introduction. In your introduction, let's use one image, and that image is of an elderly gentleman. So that's your grandpa, right? That's your granddad who is a veteran. And that image in your mind on that clock is what you want your introduction to be. And that lets you know, one, it's your grandpa's story, and then that should remind you of your key message, which is we should never forget, let's support each vet. Okay, so that's the first image in your introduction. Now, if you go on to your main idea is about the charity's purpose. So what could you think of about purpose? Well, what I came up with was a dolphin, which is also a porpoise, right? So if you can imagine a porpoise jumping out of the water, that's your charity's porpoise or purpose. It should help you remember and visualize that. When you see that porpoise or the dolphin in your head, you'll remember, oh, my first main idea is about the charity's purpose. And then the second image is an image of a man or a woman who's reaching down to help someone else, right? It's kind of a mountain image where someone is reaching down to help someone else. You could find your own image that kind of fits you, but that's just an example. So you've got a dolphin or porpoise, and you've got an image of someone helping someone else. So that is the charity's purpose, right? It's to help others. It's to help a veteran. All right, so now let's move on to your main idea number 2. Now there's going to be several images that you want to remember. But you're going to remember first is dollar bills, right? That's to represent the $10. It takes $10 to help a vet do something. Then the charity can use that $10 to help a vet, right? And what are some things that $10 could be spent on? So let's say the next image is a stethoscope, right? And that is for medical attention. Your $10 can help give a veteran some medical attention, whether that's prescription drugs, a visit to a doctor, whatever it might be. That's what the stethoscope represents. The second image is a wheelchair. Maybe that $10 can help a veteran get more mobile. Maybe it could be some other kind of equipment that can help them overcome whatever issue they have as a veteran. And then finally, there's a picture of a dog. Let's say your grandfather had a support animal, maybe, or a service animal, and they needed that emotional support dog. Because a lot of veterans need that. And so your $10 can help support those three things: medical care, medical equipment, and a service animal, right? So that's your main idea number 2. And now let's go to number 3. And you're going to have several images on number 3. You're going to have the same dollar amount, so that's the $10. It represents, what does $10 mean to you as an individual? What do you have to give up to help support a veteran, right? So let's say you can give up a couple of cups of coffee. So your first image is a coffee cup. Maybe you like to go and buy a coffee at a certain outlet and you do it every day. Maybe you do it twice a day. Maybe you do it 3 times a day. Who knows? But let's say you spend $10 a day on coffee. Well, if you could give up $10 for one single day, then you could help a charity with $10 a month. Just one day a month, and you've paid for that $10 if you don't drink coffee. Let's say you like to go see movies once or twice a month. What if you gave up going to the movies once a month? And you use that $10 or so to support a veteran, right? To send to that charity. So that's the second image. It's a movie ticket. And then the third and final image is a candy bar, right? So maybe you have a sweet tooth. Maybe you like chocolate. And maybe during a month you spend at least $10 on chocolate candy or a chocolate bar or some other kind of candy. So if you gave up candy or at least $10 worth of candy each month, you could support that charity. So in that main idea number 3, you've got money, you've got a coffee cup, a movie ticket, and a candy bar. What if you gave up one of each a month? That's easily would cover that $10, right? And that's what you share with your audience. That's your persuasion. This is all you have to do to give up $10 a month, and you can help support this charity. All right, so let's talk about the conclusion. The conclusion you want to be short, maybe a minute. Now you can do many things, but what I'm suggesting for this example is using a quote. And the quote I've pulled is "Home of the free because of the brave." And so that's a nice quote. It's about how America is the home of the free, and it's because of our brave veterans, right? You can talk about your grandfather being a veteran and how he deserves to be helped. And that's why we urge you, the audience, to support this charity because of veterans like my grandfather. And you, as the audience member, might have a relative or someone you know who's a veteran. And you can pull on their heartstrings, and that can help persuade them to give $10 a month to the charity that you're giving your speech about. All right? Well, so that's the clock method. If you look at it closely, now you can, rather than memorize an entire speech, you've got 11 images that you can look at. You've got the little grandpa drawing. You've got the 2 pictures, the dolphin and the people helping one another. You've got the main idea number 2 that has the dollar bills with the stethoscope, the wheelchair, and the dog, right? And then the last images is the money, coffee cup, movie ticket, candy bar. And then you're going to remember your final quote because it's the shortest part, it's the summary, and you'll remember that part. If you want to put in an image that might remind you of your quote about being the home of the free, you might put a house with a flag or some other image. But I didn't put it on this, but you could do that if you wanted to do a speech similar to that. All right, well, that's the clock method for memorizing your speech. So if you come up with a speech, divide it up into however many sections or ideas that you want to share, put images there that will remind me of the content of each of those, the introduction of the 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 main ideas you're going to talk about, and then the conclusion. And then practice it by just remembering those images. And even if you are allowed to have a note card, just draw those images on your note card in a circle. Put them where you'll remember them on the clock. And then all you have to do if you lose your place is look down and see, oh yeah, there's that picture of the stethoscope. I'm back on track. I remember now. $10 will help give medicine or medical attention. And then you can move right on through. All right, well, thanks for watching this video here at Good or Talk. I hope this clock method for memorizing a speech can help you kind of understand the concept of using images to remember your speech. And maybe the clock method can help you to do that so that you don't have to memorize your speech word for word. But those images that you can grasp and keep in your mind that are easy to recall, and each of those images help you remember the story or the parts of the story that you want to share with your audience to make sure you don't forget something important. Thanks for joining me here at Good or Talk. If you learned anything, I hope you'll give me a thumbs up, and I hope you'll subscribe to the channel as well, because I want to continue to help speakers deliver your best speech. And that's my purpose with this video. It's my purpose with this channel, is to help you deliver your best speech.